Good evening, KZFR. Hopefully everyone is having a good night tonight. This is Writing on Air. Writing on Air is made possible by the generous contributions of KZFR supporters and by Sonia Airy, a local Allstate insurance agent. Sonia is concerned about the community and helps families understand their immediate and long-term needs and goals. Whether you're protecting your auto, home, boat, motorcycle, or life, Sonia Airy can help. Sonia can be reached by calling or texting 345-2351. How's it going, everyone? This has been Writing on Air, and we're done for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully everyone's having a good night tonight.
We generally don't end the show in the first minute, Kevin.
Oh, I'm doing this all wrong then, apparently. This is my co-host, Brandon, and we have Nick with us, a guest tonight.
Howdy.
How's it going? Let me try this one more time, because I put on the wrong mic. Say hi again.
Howdy.
There we go. Now we can
Is that
hear you.
good?
That's only happened, like, what, 6 times now?
Seems to happen every time we have more than just you and me on the show.
That's true, yeah. I'm just a bumbling madman over here. So, well, this is Writing on Air, and it's a show for writers. Basically, if you do writing, poetry of any kind, short stories, anything that would qualify as writing, you can submit at write.onair@gmail.com.
That is WRITE.onair@gmail.com.
And we would love to have you. The show is basically a space for you guys as writers to get your show aired. As I've said many times before, we are the picture frame. You guys provide the picture. So come on here. It's a pretty relaxed setup. Nick can probably attest to that. It's
Sure,
really,
yeah.
really easy
I'm
going.
having a blast already, so.
Right on. Good, good.
First time on a radio show.
So, dude, you have some pretty cool background. You
Thank
studied in...
Edinburgh, Scotland.
Okay, cool.
That's where I got my master's degree, which is a perfect place to study poetry because it's all these like super dark, stony, cobbled streets covered in mist and orange street lights, and it sets the mood for being a brooding grad student.
It couldn't
really
be,
well.
Couldn't be a better spot,
Yeah.
man. And I think you said earlier you have a career in writing too, right?
Yes, for the better part of a decade, I've been working as a writer for e-commerce and a lot of like websites, SEO kind of stuff. So.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, well we'll come back to that later.
Sure,
But
yeah.
I think we should jump into your poetry.
All right. I usually like to start with this one because it informs a lot of my other poetry. I moved around a lot growing up. My parents were missionaries and all this kind of stuff. And the worst question I ever have to answer, which is usually one of the first questions people ask you, is where are you from? And so, yeah, I'll just jump right in.
Perfect.
Where are you from? I could say coach, or the boarding area at Gate D4. I am my nation's chief export. Sleeping upright, chewing gum, rummaging up to our elbows for paperbacks within our carry-on. This is my people's culture. The circles under our uncommitted eyes are woad. We plod through these long blue labyrinths, playing a strange game of patty cake, checking our pockets for our wallet, passport, and tickets too often, weighing our need for the lavatory against our manifest destiny for a place to rest by the gate. We don't want to talk to you. We prefer shopping alone by redundant magazines with our hands on our knees, biting the minutes away like edges of our fingernails. Nobody here will ask you what you do or how your father is. Our shoulder bags are heavy with parting words already.
Oh, that is a beautiful piece. Go ahead, Brandon.
Thank you.
You have something?
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful and sad piece.
Sure.
Yeah, it seems like you've lived in airports more than you've lived anywhere else.
That's the feeling I'm definitely trying to portray there, which is, you can't have poetry without a little melodrama. There's a prerequisite, a little bit of, yeah.
Inject that in there. Man, it's
Totally.
it just captures that feeling of just like a lifelong traveler. Someone's like, well, this is where I am. Like, you're asking who I am, but what does that mean? Like, and it immediately goes in that existential, like, where am I from? Who am I?
Yeah.
And starts spiraling out of control in that sense, and it
Totally.
captures it so well.
Yeah, and even like, so we lived in Costa Rica for 7 years, but we haven't lived there for about 10 years now. So the Costa Rica that we lived in 7 years ago is totally different from the Costa Rica now,
Yeah.
It's, I can't comfortably say I'm from there because it's not
Not the same.
It's not where I was. Yeah.
Man, I never even considered that. Like, you can say you're from one area, but given time, it's not going to be the same area.
Nope.
Ah, that's
Yeah.
such a. I love writing in poetry in general because you can take things and just condense them so
Mhm.
perfectly. And this feeling, it's so strong.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that attracted me to poetry in the first place is the consolidation of everything, the crystallization of ideas, and trying to put it as succinctly and clearly as possible. I think what's popular in American poetry right now is a lot of these really long, chatty, kind of like Facebook rant kind of poetry, which is fine for expressing yourself and, like whatever gets you writing, do that because, to quote Kurt Vonnegut, art just makes your soul grow. Any practicing, whether you paint badly, you just screw up some sculpture, just, poke around with Play-Doh, it's going to make you grow a little bit. So whatever gets you writing is fine, but once you're trying to put your work on like a major public platform,
yeah.
I think criticism can definitely come into, which is not a popular opinion sometimes, Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
It's almost like at that point, it's hard not to take it personally.
Totally, yeah. And it's hard to separate the subject matter that, or the like inciting incident, the emotion that you first put into the poetry, the emotion that made you sit down at a desk and put pen to paper is totally different than the experience, the phenomenon of reading your poem. There's, that's size. It's a struggle, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Consolidation right there.
Because you as the writer can't know what it's like to read your poems without the knowledge, the foreknowledge that, of what you went through and what.
There's a life leading up to it, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is exactly why we love to have the authors come to the station, because Kevin and I will be sent in pieces and we'll read and we'll give our opinion of what we think is in there.
Sure, yeah.
And it can be entirely different from what the author meant, because there is a lot of abstract writing, especially that we've had submitted to us, and we give our own view, but it's not necessarily what the author intended.
Sure, yeah. Oh, you mean like you give an interpretation and the
Yes.
author is like, that wasn't it.
Yeah,
Yes.
we've had people come up to us
boy.
afterwards. Usually it's friends who've submitted and stuff, so it's nothing major. But they'll come up and say, that was a great interpretation, but you definitely missed the point here. And I'm like,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well,
But-
the reader is part author of the poem. So
Yeah.
there is no, if they didn't make the intended reading of it clear enough, then that's kind of their fault.
Yeah. See, I write a lot of ambiguous stuff, so one thing I've always enjoyed for it is part of the fun is when I put it out there, the way they interpret it gives me a different perspective of the world. Because I can put out mine, and then sometimes, because it's kind of like a puzzle in some instances, if they find the same thing I found, then I go, that's
Yeah.
really cool, because you see me, a part of me.
Totally. What was I trying to say? I've definitely had poems that I thought were garbage and didn't mean anything until I shared them around, gave them to writing circles and everything, and people picked up strange symbolism, and then they would interpret it, and then they would give you this like alternate view of your poem, and you're like, I'm going to take that angle, I'm going to rewrite it a little bit, just take advantage of that reading of it and, exploit it a little bit.
Brennan, we've discussed this like 10 times at least, but tell them the Ray Bradbury story.
Ray Bradbury gave a somewhat famous interview. Essentially, he was asked, do you intend everything that everyone pulls out of your works? And it's like, no, they make everything up. No, I wrote a story about a butterfly. It was a story about a butterfly.
And now it's in classes all around the country and it's being analyzed. He's like, I didn't mean for any of this stuff. So it can have a life of its own.
The worst example of that in poetry, I think, is, and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for saying this, the Red Wheelbarrow.
This is our number
You've listened to the
one
previous
example.
shows, haven't you?
Arms are in the air. I struck a nerve.
This is our number one example because it's, 14 words, 10 words?
16 words.
16 words, yeah.
And we literally had a English teacher at our high school that wrote her master's thesis on it.
Oh, no.
And it's like she has like a 30 or 60 page thesis on the Red Wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
How do you get 30 to 60 pages out of 16 words.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of interpretations of it. You know, the most out there, I think, being that, what is it? The Red Wheelbarrow was symbolic of Soviet communism, and that the white chickens were Bolsheviks.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is a fun, creative, you know, rereading of the Red Wheelbarrow. But
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a pleasure in that too, in being that kind of reader and like trying to come up with a lot of potential interpretations of the words. And so, you know, it's not anything I'm mad at. It's just funny sometimes.
Yeah.
And please take in the author's intent. You know, William Carlos Williams did not like people reading into his poetry. So
No. And
just be aware of that. But, you know, have fun. Have fun also.
Yeah, I always like to read it and have my interpretation on it, and then compare it with what it was originally possibly meant.
Totally.
So you look it up and stuff. Because I think the Red Wheelbarrow was written about his daughter that died of cancer or something like that. It was something really intense. Yeah,
Okay.
he was writing about a girl that I think it was his daughter that died with cancer. Please, if someone else knows this, you can email me, and I'm sure it's available online as well.
I'm
But
completely talking out of school. I don't know that much about William Carlos Williams, but I know it was part of a book called Spring and All, and it was just a snippet out of a much larger work that was obviously taken out of context and became famous on its own.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I failed that interpretation in my high school, but anyways, we're off track. What's your next piece?
My next piece is this is why I chose to read the other one first. Is because this piece is about saying goodbye and you know, leaving these places after living there for a while, getting to know people, having all your belongings there, and then just taking off, you know, and having that experience over and over again. It does kind of feel like a little bit of like dying over and over again, because you can't go back to the place, you can't go back to, you know,
the same feelings.
So this explores that feeling a little bit, and other stuff too, but I can talk about it after I read it. Leaving for good. It's nearly time. I know from the length of your clouded breath. The keys in your mitted hands clink like ice, and we stare unfocused at the road, quiet as the snowbanks that hold us briefly in. Not knowing where you'll be is the hard part. There's nowhere to seat the doll of you in my thoughts. Consider, when death comes like a spring melt, and the chemistry of carbon and charge that holds us within ourselves pearls into the watershed, with every flake of us losing its bloom, every ribbon of our dissolution spinning into widening ribbons in the endless dark, taking on the shape of a breath, there's a chance, if I understand anything of infinity, the snow will fall again just as it is, with every flake almost in place, one on top of the other, so that the same snowbanks stand where they had, with the same figures between them. Then, I'll tell you again under the yellow raincoat of a street lamp's light, the same words falling impossibly in the same line, the ones you didn't hear the first time. I know you would argue that this means less, to have to utter it more than once, knowing I'll only say it again an eternity from now, and again in each eternity after that. You always said one was greater than many, but I'll take this chance to say goodbye to you every time, even if it means less to say so now.
Oh, man. That's a... Whew. Sometimes we just have poetry that's read and we just have to sit for a minute.
Sure.
Because it just hits you.
Makes for great radio, just sitting in silence.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Promise there's things going on in our mind, but this piece is such... I guess I'll approach it this way. It's always been very interesting to me how intensely crystallized in memory goodbyes become.
Totally.
And the fact that you can't hold on to that moment. And so it kind of it becomes this kind of knee-jerk, just goodbye, because you're trying to get back what that immediate feeling was of the entire trip you were there, or whatever it is. You want to hold on to that as long as you can. And this one, after you read this, it feels like, if I could describe a physical action, like holding onto a rope that is being pulled out of your hand. It's the best way I can hit it. Just like, you know, it's gonna be gone.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
yeah.
This just hits me because I've had to say goodbye to a couple of good friends before and
Sure.
that sort of thing. It's just this is just one of those things that kind of embodies that phrase "parting is such sweet sorrow," because it is sad and it's horrible, but there's this hope in this poem, this small hope that you'll get this chance again.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't work out, then maybe the next time and maybe the next time. And that is just sad but hopeful, and it's bittersweet and it's hard to chew.
Thank you. Yeah. A lot went into this one. This is one, like, if I show people my poetry, this is usually one I lead with. It's, something I'm a little, feels a little closer to. But yeah, you said something about saying goodbye that I wanted to circle back with. I think just that it's such a unique, when you have to do it a lot, you grow an appreciation for it, and people usually save the best things to say to you until goodbye. If they know that you're not coming back, they're usually the most truthful, and they're the most upfront with everything that they wish they'd tell you. You just hear everything comes out in a goodbye. And so there's I don't know, but bittersweet is a good way to put it. But I don't know, there's a beauty in the loss.
Yeah, it's I've written about this before, I think, and maybe I'll have to bring it up at some point, but it's always very interesting how when goodbyes, usually it's goodbyes, sometimes it's other moments in time, but goodbyes really do kind of open up those emotions for people, because they know this is it, and so they're like, what can I impart, what can I give, what did I not give? And so they hit this point where it just brings you down to this base level of a really emotional soft spot that is usually the heart of that person, and they want to give that to you.
There's no more time left. You gotta
you gotta pass it on. You gotta do something. Like they want life to continue, and so they want to give it on to you to move forward with. And it's always a beautiful and sad and wonderful and happy, and so many things get packed in there.
And sometimes it's just like, you're visiting your parents or something, and then like you save everything important to talk about until you're just right out the door. You're gonna see them again like in a week or whatever, but it's like I also have that habit of, even if it's just a everyday goodbye, like, hey, I'll see you tomorrow, I kind of save everything everything important to talk about until
it sticks.
The Minnesota goodbye, I've heard it called. You're out the door, but then you remember like 15 things that you wanted to tell them, and then
Yep, that's how it works.
Yep.
Well, let's move on to your next one. We still have some time left.
Yeah. So this next one was written in a coffee shop under the Queen Anne Hill in Seattle. I only mentioned that because being in a coffee shop might be important to some of the scenery, and then looking up at this huge hill covered in house lights and stuff is also somewhat important to the poem. Cleaning my glasses in late December. When I take my glasses off, the street lamps foam to life as rows of gold anemones. The lamps in houses up the hill spring like dandelions between cairn stones. Tonight is the 4th of July, and my ghost in the darkening window, a lost Icarus of Matisse. The light focuses too early in the chamber of my eye, then blurs, or that's what I've been told. An iris, blue with hunger, drinks in the glistening world, quicker than its tongue can taste, and it's no wonder.
Go ahead, Brandon. You made a noise there. I heard you.
This is one of the very strange things about wearing glasses, and for those of you that can't see, I do wear glasses on a daily basis, and if you have really poor vision, or you have astigmatism like I do, when you first remove your glasses, you have rather blurry vision. And if you're looking at a lot of colorful lights, I see, and a lot of people that wear glasses will see something you will never, and it's these beautiful kind of blurry blooms of color. And this is just kind of wonderful, making something beautiful out of something that's normally a disability.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, because I wear glasses as well, I've experienced that exact same thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll blur my eyes on purpose just to get that
Yeah.
perspective again. Unfortunately, and maybe I shouldn't say this aloud, but I usually do that when driving at night, which is
Oh.
definitely not the time to be doing that.
No.
But I'm guilty of it.
Yeah. I didn't actually know I needed glasses until I was like 16 years old. And so there was a lot of blurry, teenage years. And
Yeah.
then, there is that, the reverse of this poem where like as soon as you put on lenses, you can see individual leaves on trees and stars are pinpoints, and that blows your mind. But then, yeah, going back to not having the corrected vision is,
It's
fun.
Yeah.
It's nice having both.
And it's neat because people who don't have eyes that I guess are less functioning is the best way I can put that, don't ever get to see that side of the world.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty beautiful things like this poem describes that come from just a little bit of imperfection, which is a really interesting note as well.
Yeah.
I guess we'll end on that one and move to the next one. It kind of was like the last
Yeah.
jewel of beauty there, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it's not, I guess it's technically not ekphrastic, because ekphrastic poetry, for those who don't know, is about a specific painting or about a specific photograph, or, there's a very specific visual impetus, and you are writing specifically about that. If it were a photograph, it would be that it's just a exercise almost in figurative language. You're trying to make a quick visual stimulus. You're trying to explain it in as many ways as you can. The Lost Icarus of Matisse.
Yeah.
People don't know that piece. It's the one that's like the yellow, weird outline of a person, and there are all these like red gunshot explosions all over the place. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll move on.
Yeah, very neat.
This one's called Life Without Mistakes, and it's a bit of a sidestep. Life Without Mistakes. When the sun comes up, it feels like the sun. It's winter, but the orange tree is growing fruit in the yard. A blue scrub jay leaves his wife and sits on a cement bench, wondering where the young birds go. A deer stares wall-eyed at a dandelion, shedding ticks. The ticks pray for human children, and the gods sometimes deliver. Children go to the hospital all day long. A few of them get better. Parking lots fill and empty. Sometimes a man will turn to his partner in grief to drown himself, digging for his heart like a coin in a small jean pocket. In another town, a woman goes home to a different man. They don't touch, and the house rests so lightly around them they could bend the walls with a push, or tear a hole big enough they could crawl through. And when the sun goes down, it really goes down.
Oof. I want your interpretation of this one. I think this would be a
You
good
want
one
my
for-
interpretation of this one?
Yeah. We'll lead with that. I think that'd be a good strong point.
Oh boy. So everybody who knows me is sick and tired of hearing about Jack Gilbert, who is he's, I think, the greatest poet in the last, 50 to 100 years, whatever. He's the only guy who I've ever taken like their collected poems and read it from page 1 to the last page, just completely through, which is hard to do with a book of poetry. I'm going to be honest. A little bit of, yeah. He has this one that really affected me a while back called Failing in Flying, and it's really a forgiving poem, even though the entire poem's about a divorce and going through just the loss of love and just this sort of decaying of a human, of this relationship. And but he describes it so plainly, and he just, you'd have, please go, everybody on the air should go and read the poem eventually, and Failing in Flying by Jack Gilbert. Make your own interpretations, but this was kind of my attempt at doing a similar thing. So the title is really important to the rest of the poem, Life Without Mistakes. And then, these ticks are biting children, and children aren't getting better, and these tragedies happen, and the relationships fall apart, and these aren't mistakes. These are, not saying that, there's any sort of like ultimate plan or whatever that these are guided towards, but It's kind of a stuff happens and you're not in control, and it's, you know, to put it, yeah, in very simple terms,
it's a strong way to the theme that you're evoking here. It's a really great way to pull people out of reminiscing on, oh, it was a mistake, and pull them from the past to the present of the moment and be like, it happened, let's deal with this. And that this piece to me really forces you to be in that moment of whatever is going on, and it pulls you away, which I'm sure maybe Jack's poem as well. Jack Gilbert, was it?
Jack Gilbert. Yep.
Yeah, he might have had the same kind of essence there. I haven't read the piece, so I can't speak on it, but that's what it feels like. It pulls you and makes you focus on whatever's going on, not as a mistake, but like, and even if it was, it's not here. You need to focus on what's now, and that the fragility of the moment too really is captured in this as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, this really just seems more like you're just trying to draw attention to everything that's happening, but you're not criticizing it at any point. You're not using any adjectives that this is bad or that this is horrible. You're just saying this is happening.
Yeah.
And that once you pair that with the title, you realize you're more or less saying this is life. This happens. And yeah, there are no lives with mistakes. There are just lives with different turns.
Yeah. You touched on something I want to go back to. So, yeah, you not using any sort of valenced emotional language is obviously a very deliberate choice. And I think a lot of readers who are approaching poetry pretty new like things contextualized for them. They like, you know, the poet to tell them what's sad, or tell them the funny thing that's about to happen, or tell them, you know, like try to prime them for the emotional payoff. But, you know, the more and more you read, I'm just really, I think you're taking the reader's, not responsibility, but their opportunity out of a piece when you do too much of that. You know, you load the language for them. You don't have to tell somebody usually that children going to the hospital is not a happy moment, you know, and to try to put, I don't know, children go to the hospital all day long crying and, you know, screaming, and it's a sad thing. It really doesn't do it justice. But there's something else I'm trying to put it's an insecurity where I think the poet is not confident enough in the material of their poem that they know it's going to come across as sad or beautiful, or you know what I mean? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It's almost like a pre-digestion at some point too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, let me just give this to you. And that point, it's almost, I don't want to say this in a bad term, but it's almost just like entertainment. Just like, here you go, here's some popcorn, eat
it.
As opposed to being like, no, this is a two-way street here.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe a suggestion for those who write poetry out there, try it, you know, try not including those kinds of words. Try not, you know, forcing the perspective. Because I'm not saying that your poems are going to become a lot better. Like, all of your poetry isn't suddenly going to become beautiful and poignant or anything. You're still going to fail, and you're going to fail a lot. Sometimes the sad things the things that you thought were sad aren't going to come across as sad, but that's a learning experience. You know, you have to be willing to fail, and you have to put yourself out there, and I don't know, read to a lot of people and take feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're right at the end, so you have, I'm going to say, 1 minute and 30 seconds. So I'll ask the question. This is prepped, and I know we can't get the full answer here, but maybe the gist of it. So you do writing as a career, and that's a unique perspective that we haven't had in a while, or really at all.
Yeah.
Advice for doing writing as a career?
For getting the job in the first place is do the work first. You know, make a portfolio. If you want to write website copy, write some copy for fake websites. Make it as, you know,
practice.
Yeah. That's going to be your portfolio. That's going to speak a lot louder than than your resume in most cases. Secondly, you know, stand up for your tastes. You are like if you have more education in writing than the rest of the team, you know, you should know that, but hold your opinions very loosely, because you can't have all the information about your audience. You can't have all the information about the other programs going on in the company. There's stuff that you just
It's going to be what it's going to be. Yeah. I wish we had more.
With it.
I wish we had more time for your answer, but this is like the last 10 seconds of the show.
Oh,
so
sure, yeah.
I appreciate having you on
Thank
here,
you
man.
so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is so much fun.
This has been a
it's
blast.
Great having you.
Hopefully we'll get you back again. We'll see. Put that in the works and in the pipes and all that stuff. But thank you, Nick. This has been phenomenal.
Thank you.
And this has been Right On Air. Right On Air is made possible by the generous contributions of KZFR supporters and by Harrison Daily Wright Accountancy Corporation in Chico. Harrison Daily Wright, specializing in accounting and bookkeeping services, auditing, tax prep and planning, and management support services for nonprofit organizations and more. To reach Harrison Daily Wright, call 895-1209. Have a good night, everyone. This has been KZFR 90.1, Right On Air.